Hi, everyone. We are back with Karnataka Assistant Professor questions. Today, it's a very important area. What is it, Ankita? Tell them.
Yes, so today we will be discussing questions from gender studies and also literary theory and criticism. And if you look at the PYQs of Karnataka Assistant Professor exam of the last time this exam happened, they gave very in-depth questions from these two areas. So you're expected to read the primary texts and understand the concepts that these texts talk about in a very detailed and elaborate manner. Because from British literature and all the other areas, we have seen comparatively easier questions. But whenever it comes to gender studies and theory and criticism, they have given very in-depth questions which will check your conceptual clarity in the exam.
So our questions today are a little long. If you are feeling very tired now, you can just listen to our sweet voices, and tomorrow you can watch the recording again to make it hardcore learning. Isn't it, Ankita?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, here we go. In a
Perfect.
Room of One's Own, that is a very major book by Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf creates the fictional figure of Judith, Shakespeare's gifted sister. What is he trying to illustrate here? Is she trying to show that genius is predominantly a male characteristic, requiring women to work harder to achieve literary recognition? Genius is predominantly a male characteristic. No, it is not.
Mm.
Women in the Elizabethan era were inherently incapable. No, women are not incapable. That is also wrong. So when you see the options, look for those words that will make the options wrong. There are distractors. You should use your inference skills and understand, okay, this option could be wrong because of this word. The material conditions and societal expectations of patriarchy, sounds right, directly stifle female creative potential. Correct. Patriarchal society stifles female potential, regardless of innate talent. I think that is the answer. Let us read the fourth option also. Shakespeare's talent was hereditary. No. And it was biologically impossible for his sister. No, that option needs one punch in the nose. Ankita, do you think C is the answer?
Yes, C is the perfect answer for this question. Yes. So actually,
Ta-da!
through
Okay,
this
speak.
creation of the character of Judith Shakespeare, who was equally talented. Virginia Woolf imagines her as equally talented as Shakespeare, and it shows how the institutional access was systematically denied to women. And it exposes the structural violence which is embedded in our literary history. So that's what this figure of Judith Shakespeare is supposed to expose in this essay.
Excellent. Let us move on to the next question.
Hmm.
Gita, today I just taught Karnataka Assistant Professor class and we loved it. It
Yes.
was such a beautiful class. Kerala Assistant Professor also I taught today.
Hmm.
We rocked. Guys, join our course. You will have the most amazing experiences. Book 10 of the Republic. That is the last book of the Republic. In Book 10 of the Republic, Socrates argues for the expulsion of poets from the ideal city. Which of the following best captures the critique of artistic mimesis or imitation in this context? Artistic mimesis or imitation. Poetry is banished because it fails to adequately mimic the beauty of the physical world. Ankita, do you think that is the answer? No.
No.
Poets are viewed as knowledgeable in all subjects, including justice and morality, and therefore they compete with philosopher kings. No. Art imitates the physical world, yeah, which is itself an imitation of the forms, yeah, making it a deceptive imitation of an imitation. That is the answer. Art is considered harmless amusement. And it wastes the time of citizens? No. Says the answer again. Do you think, Ankita? That is
Yes,
yes.
correct. This is the correct answer. And this is what we
Ta-da-dang.
actually call, yes,
Yeah. Speak
the
now.
the theory of forms of Plato. Plato's theory of forms believes that this material world that we live in, it is not the real world, but it is rather an imperfect and changing reflection of the unseen and unchanging and eternal realm of abstract forms of ideas. So that's why this world in itself is a copy, and the artists are making copies of copies. And that's why he talked about the banishment of the poets from the ideal republic. And it's a very important Socratic dialogue. The Republic, it's a very important Socratic dialogue, which also uh, elaborates on the concept of justice. It elaborates on the concept of justice because this very dialogue opens with this statement or question that what is justice? And then this dialogue proceeds.
Excellent. I'm loving this. Would you like to read?
Yes. Okay. So now we have a question from Preface to Lyrical Ballads. So in Preface to Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth asserts that there neither is nor can be any essential difference between the language of prose and metrical composition. However, in his subsequent defense of meter, he argues that the super addition of meter serves a crucial function. Which of the following statements here best aligns with Wordsworth's critical justification for using meter, despite his rejection of poetic diction? So this question
Ankita, can
is
you read the
talking
last question once again for clarity and then explain?
Yes. So here the question is, which statement here will align with Wordsworth's critical justification for using meter, despite his rejection of poetic diction, as we have seen in Preface to Lyrical Ballads. Now let's look at the options. So, what does he say? That meter provides a necessary artificial barrier that protects the reader from raw, unrefined emotions of the rustic subject? No, he never talks about any such thing. Next, meter serves as a temperament or charmed limit that moderates the painful feelings in a poem, contributing to the super added pleasure. This can be because we can see similarity in the terms which Wordsworth directly used. Meter is used to distinguish the noble, elevated subject matter from the trivial language of daily conversation. No. Lastly, meter acts as a substitute for imagination, allowing a poet with limited creative sensibility to produce quality poetry. Absolutely wrong. So here the correct answer would be option B, or the second one, where Wordsworth said that meter serves as a temperament. He exactly called it as a temperament or charmed limit that helps in the alleviation, or it helps in the moderation of the painful feelings which are often a poem generates or conveys to the readers. And hence, it adds to the pleasure of a poem.
Yes. So when you see long options, instead of reading everything, quickly eliminate what are absolutely wrong and then focus on the ones that could be the answer. That way you can save time and you can be less pressurized in the exam hall. Right. It is very important to read the original text. Only then we'll be able to answer easily. Which of the following statements best aligns with Cleon Brooks's defense of paradox in the famous essay, The Language of Paradox? Ankita, I'm getting a cough. Can you please read it?
Yes. So, which statement here aligns with Cleon Brooks's defense of paradox in his essay, The Language of Paradox? So, how is Brooks defending paradox? Is he saying that paradox is a rhetorical ornamentation that allows poets to present simple truths through complex, ambiguous language? Next, the poet uses paradox to showcase intellectual superiority, separating poetry from emotional experience. Next, paradox is the language of poetry because it forces the reconciliation of opposites and embodies the emotional structural complexity of poetic truth. Or, paradox should be minimized in poetry as it often disrupts the clarity and sincerity of the poetic soul. So before we answer this question, we have to understand that this essay is a major work from the school of new criticism, a school of criticism which believed or which saw poetry not as something that can be paraphrased into very simple prose, but they saw poetry as a self-contained structure of tensions, ironies, and resolved contradictions. And the main idea of Cleanthropus was that the language of poetry is the language of paradox. So here, option C would be correct, that paradox is the language of poetry because it forces the reconciliation of opposites and it embodies the emotional structural complexity of poetic truth.
As soon as you see this question, you should see paradox is a rhetorical ornamentation. It is not just an ornament. So as soon as you read this, you should feel like, no, this is wrong. The poet uses paradox to showcase intellectual superiority. No. Paradox should be minimized in poetry. No. So even without reading it, you will be able to guess the correct answer. And then you read it and see if it matches. Actually, the long statement type questions are not complicated. They test your inference skills and intelligence more than real scholarship, right? And also, like Ankita was saying, you should remember that Cleanth Brooks is new critic, and he would focus on the poem itself, not the context. With that background information, also, you will be able to guess. So don't get stressed when you see big questions and analytical questions at all. Look at this. This is also a big question. There is a passage given. A man thinks of his body as a direct and normal connection with the world, whereas he regards the body of a woman as a hindrance, a prison. Woman has ovaries, a uterus. These peculiarities imprison her in her subjectivity, circumscribe her within the limits of her own nature. Obviously, it's a man-woman comparison. And this is from the second sex. Introduction of the second sex. Simone de Beauvoir's broader existentialist framework. Which of the following statements most accurately reflects her critique of otherness? Think with a calm mind without getting stressed about long sentences. Women are inherently more subjective and emotionally volatile due to biological factors. Will she say that? Women are more subjective and emotionally volatile. Will she say that while men have historically acknowledged and managed? No, that is obviously wrong. Otherness is a structural and ontological position. Sounds very academic. Where man defines himself as the subject and woman as the object. It's a very objective sentence. It could be right. Let us keep it aside. The biological differences between men and women, such as uterus, are the primary objective causes of women's historical subordinate status. When you are in the exam hall, you will think, oh my God, is it correct or wrong? Keep it aside. Beauvoir advocates that women must transcend their immanence by embracing their reproductive functions. No, she will not say that. Will she say that? The biological differences between these two, which is the more correct answer? Of course, this is the correct answer. Isn't it, Ankita?
Yes. Option B, actually, it captures the essence of this entire book. That how this term woman, it's not even a natural category. That's what Simone de Beauvoir contends in this text itself, the second sex. That woman, what is a woman? This is the beginning question of this text, of this introduction rather. What is a woman? And she deliberates on this idea that woman is not even a natural category. It's a constructed idea that is formed by social norms. And
Yes.
hence this otherness, it's a structural position where man assumes himself as the superior.
Right. So this is part of the Karnataka assistant professor course that is happening at Vallath. We have started, but students are still joining in large numbers because they know that people who pass will be Vallath students. And don't deny yourself that opportunity. Of course, other people will also pass if they study really, really, really well. Anybody can pass, but our students always study really well. And we have videos, live classes, focused revision classes, PDF materials, quizzes, and model tests. Ankita, over to you.
Yes. So now we have a text from a very important question from a very important text. So in the context of Aristotle's poetics, which of the following statements best represents the hierarchy, the order of dramatic elements in his argument for a successful tragedy? So in Aristotle's poetics, he has given us a list, an order of the elements which make up a successful tragedy. So which order is correct here? So first, ethos is superior to mythos, as the moral purpose of the hero dictates the actions, fostering a greater degree of catharsis. Does he prioritize ethos the most? No, he never does that. Next, we have mythos or plot is the soul of tragedy, and a complex plot involving peripeteia and anagnorisis in a logical sequence of probability is superior to a simple plot. Sounds correct because Aristotle has famously talked about plot as the soul of tragedy. But let's look at the other options. Spectacle is essential as it allows the audience to visualize the tragic action, making it more engaging and emotionally cathartic than mere diction. Obviously, no. Spectacle is not the most important one. Then thought, dianoia. Thought must be elevated above diction as the rhetorical capability of the characters is more important for the plot. No. So option B is correct because famously in poetics, he says that plot is the soul of the tragedy and how a complex plot is superior to a simple plot.
Very good. In chapter 13 of Biographia Literaria, how does Coleridge specifically distinguish the secondary imagination from the primary imagination and fancy? It is the agent of all human perception, unconsciously creating new shapes and forms. Secondary imagination is not for all human perception. Secondary imagination is only for the writer or the poet. It is passive faculty. No, it is not passive. It is active and creative. This is wrong. It is an active, correct, conscious, correct faculty that dissolves, diffuses, and dissipates in order to recreate. Correct. It is the exact equivalent of the Aeolian harp. Receiving, no, not passive, wrong. C is the answer. Secondary imagination is active, conscious faculty that dissolves, diffuses, and dissipates in order to recreate. Whereas primary imagination is the agent of all human perception. It is the repetition of the infinite act of creation. And fancy is only the mere drapery of poetry. Okay. Ankita, your turn.
Which of the following best encapsulates F.R. Leavis's central argument regarding the great tradition in his 1948 work? So what is his main argument here about these novelists? That the novel is fundamentally an entertainment medium designed to reflect the expansive social life of the British Empire. No, he never talks about it as merely an entertainment. Next, The great novelists are distinguished by their technical innovation in narrative structure, independent of moral considerations. No, absolutely not. Next, a true novelist must possess a high level of mature, ethical, and humanly important preoccupation with life. Correct. And in his work, he uses the term seriousness. Seriousness is the quality that is most admired in these novelists who belong to this great tradition like Jane Austen, Joseph Conrad, because he admires this quality of seriousness and their profound engagement with life and morality. All these are very important qualities that F.R. Leavis talks about in his great tradition.
Right. The last sentence, last is also wrong.
Huh. Because he never talks about Defoe and Richardson.
In Sexual Politics, Kate Millet argues that patriarchy is a social constant maintained through sexual politics. Which of the following statements best represents a critical analysis of literature as a tool of sexual politics? How does literature reflect sexual politics? Millet praises Norman Mailer. She actually criticizes Norman Mailer. And she praises Jean Genet, not Norman Mailer. She argues that sexual politics is only valid in the political realm. No. It is valid in literature. Millet advocates for a return to traditional literary forms. No, she will not ask you to return to traditional. She contends that literature serves as a vehicle of ideology, reproducing patriarchal and sexual inequality. So, by eliminating the wrong answers, we can always reach the right answer. Right? All right. Ankita, your turn.
Which of the following statements here best reflects Longinus's critical position on the relationship between nature, that is inborn genius, and art in achieving the sublime? So what's the relation between nature and art in achieving sublimity? Yes.
Ankita, can I just illustrate? Without reading everything, I'll illustrate how to eliminate. Okay. Look at the first option. Longinus argues that sublime is entirely gift of nature, making technical study unnecessary. Wrong. This cannot be right because technical study is not unnecessary. While the sublime stems from a great soul, that is correct, or natural genius, art provides the necessary discipline, correct? Art provides, read in chunks. Don't read entire thing and get, crazy in your head. To control passion, preventing it from becoming drier, maybe correct, keep it aside. Longinus, don't even read completely until you reach an answer and then read it carefully. Longinus prioritizes acquirable sources over... No. Inborn is higher, not acquirable. Inborn is higher. So this is wrong. He does not prioritize acquirable. Inborn is higher. So this is wrong. True sublimity, according to Longinus, is achieved only when the author suppresses. No. So 2 is the answer. B is the answer.
Yes.
When you see that word itself, you should stop reading more and say, no, it is wrong. Finished. Like that, read. Don't get go crazy reading all this. Okay. In Matthew Arnold's The Function of Criticism at the Present Time, the concept of disinterestedness is crucial. Which of the following statements best articulates the function of disinterestedness? Like I told you, just eliminate. Disinterestedness, okay. It encourages critics to focus purely on, whenever you see such words, beware of it. It focuses purely on, beware, that is wrong. If he says purely, it is wrong. It acts as a mechanism for the critic to detach themselves from the socio-political context. Okay. Disinterestedness is to detach from the socio-political context, allowing them to create an intellectual climate that prepares the ground for future creative. Maybe correct. Looks like correct. It implies a total lack. Don't even read. Total lack of interest. Wrong. Don't even read. It represents a call for the critic to embrace a local and no. He said we should not be local and provincial. We should have a very European outlook. So I am sure B is the answer. B is the answer. Ankita, please read the question.
Which of the following statements best encapsulates the shift from structuralism to post-structuralism regarding the concept of sign? So how the idea of sign is changing with this shift from structuralism to post-structuralism. Post-structuralism argues that the signifier and signified are fixed. Absolutely wrong. It never talks about being fixed.
Fixed. As soon as you hear that word, you tang. Yeah.
Post-structuralism reverses the Saussurean model.
It is not a simple reversal. Asserting that signified precedes the signifier. Fixed. No. Fixed.
Post-structuralism argues that the link between signifier and signified is unstable and constantly shifting, leading to an infinite play of signifiers where meaning is never fully present. Correct. Everything is unstable, turbulent. Post-structuralism eliminates the signifier. No, entirely no.
Only on the mental. He says post-structuralism says there is only the signifier. Signified also becomes a signifier, isn't it? So third is the answer.
Yes.
Are you loving this, guys? I'm loving this. Are you loving this, Ankita?
Yes, it's very funny, very, it's very interactive, lovely concepts. Yes.
Next and the last.
Okay.
Please read.
In the Laugh of the Medusa, Helen Cixous argues for a radical, embodied form of writing, which she calls as écriture féminine. So which of the statements here encapsulates her critical challenge to phallocentric discourse? She encourages women to adopt masculine literary strategies? Absolutely not. She proposes white ink, breast milk as a metaphor for a new fluid writing style that is rooted in the body and aims to destabilize patriarchal language. Yes, sounds correct. She argues that women must remain silent. Absolutely not. She reinterprets the myth of Medusa to argue that men should be feared. Absolutely wrong. So option B is correct. She proposes the metaphor of white ink, breast milk as a metaphor for a new fluid writing style.
Wow. That was a lot and I loved it. So guys, what is your next move? Join this course because you will never regret it. We are doing great there and you will love the classes, you will love the learning and you will love being an assistant professor in Karnataka. Thank you. What do you say, Ankita?
It was lovely. It was a power-packed session with, very nice questions, nice concepts, and very major concepts prescribed from the syllabus. So, and these are the types of questions which we have seen previously in these exams. So, yes, keep learning. Please never forget to learn from the primary texts. Those are your pillars, your primary texts. So please focus on them and you will ace your exam.
Absolutely. 100%. So God be with you all. Vallath is also with you all. Do well. Good night.
Good night. Bye.